So I'm Laura. I'm an account executive at Bucketlist, and my day-to-day is really just speaking with all HR leaders about recognition and the power of it. So really excited to be speaking with Kara and Jay here. And Kara, I'll let you do a quick intro.
Perfect. Thank you. So my name is Kara, and like Rebecca said, I am the employee experience specialist here at One Magnify. I've been with my company for 8 years, and I've kind of molded this great position where I am all things people and all things employee experience. And a huge part of that is recognition and making sure that people feel like they belong. So I'm super excited to be here with Jay and just dive into things and have a great discussion today.
Well, yeah, I'm excited to be here with you, Kara, and Laura, and Rebecca, and everybody who's watching and attending. This is definitely an honor. Yep, my name is Jay Graves. I'm the founder of Leadership Canvas, and we focus on building high-performance teams and organizations. And we have this methodology that, as Rebecca was saying, called CLEAR. And the each letter stands for something: culture, leadership, employee engagement, agility, and reward and recognition. And the reward and recognition piece is so incredibly critical, and it's something that we really emphasize, linking all the other pieces together. So really excited to be able to talk about this today, and certainly with the dynamic of IT.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So we'll jump into it. Our first question is, why is recognition especially important for tech and remote workforces? And do you have a story where recognition made a real impact on someone?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And I think recognition is important all the time, no matter what. I'm sure everybody has heard that throughout all of these sessions. But especially when we're remote, it feels like we're in our little house bubble and we only talk to the people that we're directly working with and we don't hear from anybody else. So we kind of question, are we doing a good job? Are people seeing my work? And I think recognition is a great way to show people we see you, we hear you, you're doing an awesome job, and just to remind them that their work matters. We all know that, like, if we feel like our work matters, then we try to do better and we try to continue to help in every situation that gets brought up. So I think it's really, really important to give those shout outs, even if you feel like it's something little. It means a lot to people, especially when they're remote. And I have a story. It's kind of unique, whereas not necessarily about recognition, but about how recognition sticks. But as I said earlier, if you were here, we have an award called a Bravo Zulu, and it means literally job well done. And managers can nominate their employees for this Bravo Zulu award if they've gone above and beyond, or a client can't stop speaking high praises about them, or they brought a platform that no one else thought of to a project. And when you get that recognition, your manager goes up in front of the entire company, in front of C-suite, the CEO, and tells everybody what you did and why you deserve this Bravo Zulu award. So we were having one of those meetings, and this was years ago, and one of our managers decided to write a poem about the employee instead of just saying to everybody, this is what they did. So they went around, told everybody this poem, and then that turned into everybody giving it a haiku about this person and about different things. And even years later, we still talk about that recognition because it was unique and it was outside of the box. And I think that part about recognition is important too, is to start doing things that are unique, that aren't just like your basic, hey, great job, high five kind of thing. Because even now we're opening our floor back up to people coming back into the office. And what do we have when people come off the elevators is a giant poem, because it has stuck 5 years later. That poems are something we do as a culture now. So that was just like a fun story about recognition that I feel like has really made an impact virtually. And now it's coming back in full circle as we start potentially coming in person a little bit more.
That's a great example. As a veteran, I like Bravo Zulu. That's really cool. Doing a haiku, I'd probably have to like use like Chat GPT or something, because I don't know if I'd be able to pull that off. That's a great question. I think that, I work with a lot of different companies and all different kind of industries, and I see that we have a bunch of different, industries represented here. And companies tend to be siloed a lot of times anyway, right? And so then you throw in remote work into that and it creates even more dispersion. And it's kind of like, out of sight, out of mind is what we find a lot of times with your remote workers. And so, being really intentional, making sure that all the employees are recognized, not just the ones that you see that come into the office, or maybe even if they're hybrid, you maybe get more frequency with them. And so being really intentional and not forgetting people that are out on an island, and making sure that you're bringing that reward and recognition program throughout everybody. Um, and then really linking it back to, for us, the culture. What are the values and the behaviors that you want to see within an organization, and then you can curate your reward and recognition system behind that. um, and I think, as an example, my background before I started my company was in sales. And a lot of people would think like, well, salespeople, they're driven by money. Just, as long as they're getting their incentive comp, they're good. They're, whatever. But it's not true. Salespeople are unique individuals. We're all unique individuals, and we like to be rewarded in different ways. Sure. Like, monetary is great. But if we can be a little bit more thoughtful in understanding each individual and how they want to be recognized, it can be even more impactful. And an example that I have is from a salesperson organization we were working with, and there was a real introverted salesperson, but one of their top performers. And as I was kind of talking to this individual, he's like, "Yeah, okay, walking across stage, that's fine. I know I have to do it for the company, but I don't really love it." And as we got talking a little bit more, I was like, "So why do you do what you do? What drives you to get out there in the rain and sell, and and do what you do at such a high level?" And he said, "Well, I just want to make my family proud." He was like, "I just think about my family all the time." And so I shared this with the CEO and the sales leaders, and we kind of talked about this as a great example to curate things. And so the CEO scheduled a field ride with this individual, but it was really just a guise to take him and his family out to dinner. And he reported back that went to dinner, was just talking all about what this individual meant for them and for the organization. He said there was tears around the table, that he just couldn't believe that he would take the time out of his busy schedule to be able to do that. And I just thought that was such a wonderful, wonderful example of really understanding that person's behavior, how they would react to that reward, and how that just bolstered them even more. And I think, also too, I mean, we do track business impact, and one of the things that we have seen directly related to reward and recognition is about a 26% boost in performance just on the recognition metric alone. So it is really important. So one of the things that we do talk with people about is that, this is where your people strategy bolsters your business strategy. And it's really, really important. And just don't overlook it. It's critical, and it does drive performance.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Kara. I think some similarities between the two that you mentioned is that it has to be really intentional and has to be specific to that individual, but also pulling in some of that company culture, really making it meaningful for that specific employee, and then building on that culture from there. So into our next question is around, what are the challenges that remote or distributed teams face when they are building a culture of that recognition?
Yeah, I bet people in the chat could definitely put their biggest challenges, because I think we all have an insane amount of challenges when it comes to recognition. I have heard so many things. I'm too busy, or it doesn't really matter, or I don't know what to do for them. So I think for us, is just reminding people, hey, we do have recognition tools available to you. Like, please use all of our tools. So I think that's our biggest challenge, is just reminding people of the tools they have, and reminding them there's no such thing as too busy for recognition. Like Jay said, recognition helps people stay engaged and helps people stay at a company, and especially leader to employee recognition. That is huge. I always encourage people to give some recognition with some oomph. Like, don't just say, hey, great job on this. Like, actually give an example of what they did. And, to make sure that you just, I don't know, just give some oomph. I don't know, is that a word? I don't know, but it's going to be a word today. But I also have noticed that when we increase our recognition, it actually helps us with our surveys too. So we survey our employees, and that is something that we have seen an increase on with as far as my manager cares about me, is recognition. Recognition is huge. So our biggest challenge is people just thinking it's not important when it really is one of the most important things a manager could do to an employee.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I do think umph is the word. So you get the umph award
Jay,
recognition
thank you,
today.
Jay.
Yeah, I organizations that contact us, they're either looking for growth, acceleration, or they're struggling with something. And one thing that I've noticed is that, we'll spend lots and lots of time on our business strategy, but not necessarily focused on quote unquote soft skills or people strategy in some instances. And so, things like this get pushed aside in sort of that, drinking from a fire hose. But one of the things that I try to really impart with individuals and leaders is that, there is an end game. There's a North Star here, right? And it is connected to performance. And so, if you can be, as we've said, we'll probably overuse the word intentional. I'm sorry, but if you can have that intentionality and understand what reward and recognition can do for your organization and for your teams, and quantify that and show them, that okay, yeah, this is quote unquote soft skill bucket, but it's so incredibly critical to your organization. You have to have accountability partners sometimes in these situations. That's sometimes the role that we play. Hey, let's look at the recognition. Let's see how you're doing. Let's see how we're embedding that into your organization. Um, and then constantly reminding them of what the goal is, by doing the recognition. And people have to hear things, they have to see things multiple times before it's truly embedded in your culture, and then it becomes habit. And so for us, it's just making sure that in the early stages that we're creating those habits early on, so that then it just becomes muscle memory for everybody within the group. And then you can also incorporate it into things like performance plans. You can incorporate it into, sort of the day-to-day structure of things. You can incorporate it into your staff meetings. So there's some way that you can build it into what you would be doing anyway as part of the business. And then I just let people know it takes time, it takes persistence, but if you can stick with it, then it does become habit. And when it becomes habit, it becomes organic and authentic.
Jay, to build on that, we have tried, and at our company at least, we've tried to build it into our culture totally. Where if we are on team meetings, we'll pull up Bucketlist sometimes and say, look at the top recognition we've given. Or we pull it up on our town hall meetings and say, these are the values that were most selected with that recognition. And this is how many recognitions were given out this month. So if you bring it into your culture and like everybody buys into it, even your top level down, you're going to see more and more recognition.
Yeah, and one thing that you mentioned there, top level down, is critical. Like it is critical. Like you have to get those leadership teams bought in and doing,
Mhm.
because I've seen where organizations have missed that, and you kind of have an area, but they're like, well, what about them? Do they really care? So it is so important, that top down approach. That's great, Kara.
Yeah. Yeah, we see that like in Bucketlist, we track all the metrics and everything, and we look at like how our different customers are using it. And those customers who have managers and supervisors and top level engaged in using the platform see across the board a lot more results from it.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing that I wanted to mention is Marcus actually called this out in the chat that they tie things back to core values. So you both
Mhm.
mentioned that it needs to be specific. Tying it back to core values is a great way to do it.
Yeah.
And then we've also spoken a lot about using the word intentional here. So how do you ensure that recognition feels authentic, personal, and meaningful in these remote settings?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that's really important is truly know your people. And you can do that in multiple ways. One can be as part of your onboarding process. Sometimes what we've recommended is that you have things on there like, how do you like to be recognized? What's your favorite food? What's your favorite drink? What's your favorite hobby? What's your this? All right. So you're kind of getting this profile of this individual. And it doesn't have to be an onboarding, You can do that with existing employees and a part of onboarding. But again, you can probably tell I like systems and flows, and frameworks. So by doing that, then you start to see the person as a whole person, right? And so you can say, well, me, I love RVing, I love camping, I love doing those types of things. So if my leader recognizes that and they were to want to recognize me with a park pass or something like that, like I would run to the wall for something like that, right? Like, oh my goodness, that was so great, versus like maybe a plaque or something, right? That maybe doesn't mean as much to me. So I think just really understanding your people first and then curating those rewards to what it is that would truly inspire them, that would be authentic to them and personal for them is important. And then, be creative with the names, have fun with it. If you haven't done this or you have a program and you want to elevate it, then grab a group of creative people into a room and come up with some like really creative names. And as was said in the chat as well, linking that back to your culture, your values is really important. Because again, just like you said before, you got to reinforce it. It really reinforces that recognition. So, for me, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And if you don't have creative people to come up with a creative name, chat GPT everything. That's what we all do. But um I'm gonna kind of feed off of what Jay said, honestly, and knowing your audience is huge. I know I was actually just talking about this at lunch with people, and my boss wanted to recognize me for something, and she knew that I had never been to a concert, so she actually bought me concert tickets as a thank you for something I did, and that is something that to this day I still talk about. So knowing your audience and making it authentic is super meaningful, and I think. By doing different ways of recognition is a really helpful way to do that. So we do fun things like Donut Day, where it's not necessarily recognition, but it's just a fun employee experience where people are like, oh, they care about us. And recognition is just knowing that you're cared about. So we do fun things like that. Or when we do those Bravo Zulu Awards, we try to surprise people by calling them coffee chats with leadership. And then when they get on expecting a coffee chat and for it to be serious, we like pop up with surprise, you're getting recognized in front of the whole entire leadership team. So I think by making it feel more special than just like great job is something that really sticks with people. And makes it feel important. And as everybody has said, tying them to values, that is something that we do with every recognition. We allow people to tie multiple values to one recognition too. And we run reports every month to see which of our values people are tying things to, and teamwork is a huge one that everybody selects. So I think that's awesome. And it says a lot about our culture that people are taking teamwork, and then ownership is another huge one. Of activities and projects. And then, of course, make it seem meaningful by asking your managers when you have an all-hands-on meeting, talk about the recognition. Don't just do it in our platform, but also talk about it in your team meeting. Send out an email to everybody. Send an email to whoever, the CEO or whoever is the head of your department, and say, hey, this is what this person did. Those are just great ways that it doesn't always have to be about money. It can just be about getting the kudos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically making it specific, understanding how your people really, really enjoy being rewarded. And, it doesn't always have to be about the money, but tying it back to something that's really meaningful to them can make it more important. Yeah. And so we know, speaking here, a lot of people have different preferences. So how can companies design recognition programs that work across different cultures and geographies? And what are the keys to fairness and inclusivity?
Yeah, so my company has people across the entire US. We have a large population in India. We have a group in Germany. So it's really important to us that whatever our recognition platform is, that it is inclusive to everybody. Because prior to, I mean, shout out, but we do use Bucketlist. Prior to Bucketlist, we did not have any sort of recognition platform that felt like it was for everybody. We sometimes got like, oh, that's headquarters centric. Like only in headquarters do they get that. And it's like, no, that's not true. But we needed to, that's what people believed. So we had to like say, all right, people believe this. So how can we change it? So that's what we were looking for when we were looking for a platform, is something that was global, and something that kind of touched everybody. So we wanted a platform that if people wanted a gift card, they could get a gift card. If people wanted an activity, they could get an activity. If they wanted to donate their recognition, they could do that. But then it also had a great UX experience in order to like see everybody's recognition. So it's not just you're getting something, but also you're able to see why you're getting recognized. So I think that just finding something that it can never be centric to wherever your headquarters is, or it's not specific to any sort of leadership team. I think that's really important to look for when you're looking for how to craft a recognition. I don't know, Jay, what do you got to say for this one?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that, we are, even in the US, we're multicultural, right? And then there's a lot of global companies, right? Too, that takes that even to another level. And I think what's really important here is that if you can, and I've learned a lot about Bucket List, and I think it sounds like an amazing platform because of the experiences and because you can scale it, right? So, I think that having things that are curated for the individual, like going back to the individual, what it is what do they want to see? Like, I like experiences. um you know Gift card, like, I'm like, oh, thanks for the gift card, but like, man, if you were like to provide an experience or something that I could do with my family, or even something that I could pay forward, right? Like, that means a lot. Well, that might, somebody else is going to be different. And so I think, just again, going back to really understanding the individuals, and then having a a large catalog, so that you can have like those different types of curated quote unquote experiences and rewards and recognitions that they can have, and also something that's applicable across the globe.
Mhm.
So that we can make sure that it's inclusive. I think the other thing too is that, just also making sure, like, we all have biases, right? And it's really easy to fixate on, oh, these are our top performers, or whatever. But like, everybody is contributing in the organization, and the more and more that we can take those rewards through the organization, the more that you are going to lift the organization. So, I think that's the other thing too, is we often say, like, hey, check your bias, like, make sure it's not the same 10 people that are constantly getting these awards, because that'll have the opposite effect. Really, really, and I think somebody put in here in chat earlier, like, active listening, again, that intentionality of, you know, there are people contributing all throughout the organization. Let's make sure that those rewards and recognitions are going across the organization appropriately.
Yeah, I think something that can also help with that is giving the opportunity for everybody to give recognition as well, not just leaders. So like, we want to be able to say like peer-to-peer recognition is great too, because sometimes leaders don't see everything that's happening every day. So allowing everybody to give recognition is something that has really helped us too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, peer awards, I think sometimes for a lot of people might even mean more. Like, you want to know, you want your boss to know that you were recognized, but like, hey, I sit next to Kara and she recognized this. I wasn't doing this to be recognized, but like, she recognized this. That means a ton, to me.
Mhm.
I love that. Yeah.
The another thing that we see work really effectively with our customers at Bucket List is setting out guidelines and saying, like, here is, when you want to recognize somebody, so people know how to use the platform and what's really effective. So giving guidelines gives them like more freedom almost to understand where the platform is and what it's meant to be. And really just supporting them. And you mentioned earlier too, Kara, keeping it top of mind for everybody is another important key thing.
And I'm sorry, sorry, I just got to tack onto that, Laura, but fund it, right? Like don't like, like this means a lot. And you do, like, I do tie it back to business results. Like, don't create a recognition program and then say like, okay, here's your, $500 bucket for for the organization, right? Like, it's a meaningful investment. Invest in it. The ROI on it is tenfold, so have the platform, but also make sure you're really supporting it.
Yeah. And yeah, so speaking of like the ROI in it, how do you actually measure the effectiveness of recognition?
Yeah. So one of my passions here is surveying people. I love surveying people. I don't want to out, I don't want to out like survey too much, but here at One Magnify, we survey um, people every year. We have 2 huge surveys that we send out. But then new hires, we make sure that we talk to new hires as well. So we survey our new hires 5 times a year. Just in their first year, asking questions like, do you feel appreciated by your manager? Do you feel included in with your team? So we take a look at those answers and we say, all right, do we see any trends that we need to address? Or if somebody has super positive results, we may go to them or we may go to their manager and say, what are you doing? How can we learn from you? So I think surveying people really helps us kind of gauge the effectiveness of how recognition is going. But really, our bread and butter is our big entire company survey that we have a couple of times a year that has very similar questions, but we actually get the analytics on all of those surveys, and we are able to compare them to past years. So we ask the same questions. We've been asking the same questions since 2012, pretty much. So we're able to look at the trends we're seeing when it comes to recognition and engagement, because recognition and engagement go hand in hand, and see how the trends are going and if we need to improve something. We also, I feel like a great place to do this is during one-on-ones too. So we encourage managers to give feedback during one-on-ones, and that's a great place to give recognition. I always say, or we always say here, that people shouldn't be surprised with their mid-year and year-end review results, whether positive or negative. But here, talking about positive, that is a great place on your one-on-ones to make sure that people know that they're doing well. And I know I talked with Jay about this last week, but it's really important to touch people at different points in their journey as well. So we touch new hires, we touch current employees wherever they are in their tenure, but then we also talk to people as they're exiting our company too, because a lot of times people are more honest when they're exiting a company, and that has really helped us kind of gauge how is your team dynamic and the recognition going on your team. So I definitely encourage people to talk to your people, whether it's through surveys or focus groups. That is a great way to gauge how your recognition is going. We actually just had someone leave our company, but they had transitioned to a new team about 6 months prior to them leaving. And in their exit interview, they actually talked about what a great team dynamic and what great team recognition this new team had. And so we went back to that team and said, what are you doing? Like, how can we replicate this with other teams? So I just encourage everybody, please get different perspectives from different people in their different tenure at the company, because that will give you a lot of information that you can be dangerous with.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Well, I'm going to echo that. Surveys. We do surveys. We do our culture survey, org survey, for clients, and sort of to supplement those in between, we'll do one-on-ones just from our perspective. Sometimes people might be a little more comfortable, depending on where the company is, as we're going through the transition. We'll have those small group conversations to kind of supplement what we see in those surveys. But we also encourage the organizations to do just exactly what you're saying, Kara, to have those one-on-ones, embed it. Again, going back to and embedding it and looking at where are the times, what are the meetings, where are the touch points throughout your day, your week, so on and so forth, so that it makes sense that you can add recognition, to this. And so I think that's great. So yeah, we love doing the surveys. That gives us, sort of quantifiable information, and then we also get information from the comments and also the one-on-one or the small groups, and really just understanding, all the different dimensions of the culture, but also certainly the reward piece of the culture as well, which is, I think, really important. And I loved your idea as we were talking the other day about exit interviews, because you're right. I mean, there's a lot of golden information, and it's a shame if we don't kind of data mine that gold, and learn a little bit more, throughout people's, kind of life cycle when they're within an organization. So yeah, surveys, conversations.
Yes. I want to hit survey fatigue though, so keep that in
Yeah.
mind.
Oh yeah.
When you're
Yeah.
sending out surveys, don't do too many at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great call out, because I think sometimes people think like, you have your best places to work, and then, here comes, leadership canvas with their culture survey, and then you have this and you have that. And, you can have like a 5-question little Google sheet, type survey that you can do just to check in with people. And so I think, to avoid that survey fatigue, yeah, you can make them real pointed.
Yeah. So really around like hearing the impact on your employees and what's going on directly from them. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, and one final question that we've got here today. So from our conversation today, what do you think the key takeaways should be, and what are some actions that we can all take today?
For me, I think if you could take away anything is start working on instant feedback. If you want to implement something right away, that's a very easy thing to implement. And it doesn't have to be tied to money or anything like that, like we've said a couple times, but you could just ask your managers, hey, start giving out recognition once a week through email. Or I'm not going to lie, snail mail works even better. It might be slower. It might not be instant at that point, especially sometimes with how slow mail gets, but getting something in your mailbox feels 10 times more important than somebody sending an email saying good job. That's not like official 10 times. That's just me saying 10 times more official or more important. But because that means that person took the time to actually write something out and send it to your house. So if you could do one thing today, I would say start implementing instant feedback. You will see positive results right away, and people will want to continue to do great work the more they're recognized.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, it would be starting off with, getting to know your people. We might think we know people really well, but, going through that exercise, I'm excited to click on this document that's hanging out in chat there to see what that looks like. But, I think, and I've seen some examples of what people do in the chat, and I think those are great. Just getting to know your people so that you can then start to think about, how do I want to make this an authentic recognition? And then start thinking about what are those moments where I can recognize people. And Kara, one of the things you mentioned was feedback. And I know that some organizations, some people have a hard time with feedback. So if you have a tough time in your organization with giving and receiving feedback, or it's not really a feedback culture, then recognize that and tackle that as you're also learning about the individuals, because that feedback culture is really important to then also being able to be a recognition and reward culture as well. And so I would just say, kind of do your own assessment. How well do you know your individuals, whether it's on your team or your organization? Put that mechanism in place, and then just start doing it.
Mhm. Definitely. I love, Jay, when you were talking about how asking people how they like to be recognized and some of their favorite things. I think that's a great thing to implement too, is that's something very easy. You could send out a Google form asking everybody, like, what's your favorite form of recognition? And then, yeah, some of their favorites, so that one day they could have their favorite candy end up in the mail. I actually do that with all of my new hires now, is when I onboard them, that's one of like the questions as the intro is like, what's your favorite candy? And then on their second week, they get a handwritten note from me with their favorite candy sent in the mail. So that is something that just makes them feel like, oh, they were listening. And it's something that comes up in our new hire chats now of like, that was really cool. I wasn't expecting that. I just thought it was a fun icebreaker. So that is definitely something that's easy to do as well.
Yeah. You mentioned, somebody mentioned active listening, and as a consultant, right? Like, there's nobody around here to reward and recognize me, but working with so many different people, you get to know individuals, right? And there was one person that I was working with at a company that they were a very active listener, and you mentioned snail mail. And I'm a huge F1 fan. I love Formula One races, and I have never been to one, and it was on my bucket list. And we did this exercise one time where we were talking about bucket lists, and it was kind of related to reward and recognition and all of that. And one day I went to my mail and I had in the snail mail 2 tickets to the Formula One race in Las Vegas. And I just, like, to this day, I still just can't even believe it. Like, we've become fast friends. Like, it just means so much. And it was just that individual listening. That was it. Just listen and capture something unique about somebody that they
Mhm.
mention can go such a long way when you turn around and do something for them. And
Yeah.
Kara, I love Toblerone. Just saying.
That's awesome.
Love it. Great. Well, thank you so much, Kara and Jay. Fantastic conversation. We covered a lot here, going from, making sure that it's intentional, how you can measure the effects of things, what we can start out with today. I think there were a lot of great takeaways from it.